Well, up on the bench today, another Magnavox ZV457MG9, and the customer's mainly complaining about tape issues. Won't take a tape, won't play a tape, eats the tape. So let's put a tape in it, see what it does. And yeah, that's definitely a problem. And yes, it did eat the tape. So, thinking first thing I'm going to do, clean the mode select switch. That's like the #1 culprit because the power does actually come on and stay on. So let me go ahead and zip this apart. Hopefully this will be a quick little video, which is going to mean probably 15 or 20 minutes, but hopefully I'll get it down to less than that. Well, I guess there's a first time for everything. I've never had these 3300 microfarad caps fail. But look at this. Both of those 3300s at 6.3 are bulged. But look at the 4700. It's perfectly fine. No issues whatsoever. What is going on here? Are those Suscon caps? Or possibly a different brand? I'm not sure. Now, let's see if I can bring this around town. Oh no, those are Intercon caps. The 3300s have failed in this one. Well, is that the whole problem? So I think I'm going to go ahead and pop the switch mode power supply out of this unit, and as usual unsolder the positive lead off all the capacitors and do an ESR check on all the caps and just see if any other ones might be suspect. So I know I've been asked this question many times, and I know I did a brief explanation on one of the videos, but I'm going to go ahead and do it again just with the original schematic diagram that goes with this unit. This is the power supply diagram for the ZV457. And so let me zoom in on a couple things and explain why I like to unsolder one lead, primarily the positive lead of most of these capacitors when I do a test. Now this doesn't hold true in every situation, but it does hold true in a few situations. Better to be safe than sorry. So let me zoom in and show you what I'm talking about. So right here is C1017. That's the main 4700 microfarad 6.3 volt filter cap. And so when I do an ESR check on this capacitor, I really don't want, if the Zener diode is shorted, I don't want it to show up as a good ESR on this capacitor. Also, if this capacitor is absolutely open to the world, let's just say 20 ohms ESR, through this 15 microhenry coil and this 1000 microfarad cap, I would be backfeeding the resistance back to this capacitor. So even though this is open, if this capacitor were good, it could give me a false good on this capacitor. Likewise, through a 47 microhenry capacitor, this capacitor C1021, which is only a 470 at 6.3, could give me a false positive. Once again, imagine if both C1019 and C1021 were physically good capacitors, electrically good. Through these inductors, if I didn't unsolder one lead of C1017, I could conceivably chase my tail in circles for quite some time to determine that this is actually the problem. Once again, up here, I've got C1015, 1000 microfarad cap. There's L1010, and then C1014, a 470. So if I don't break this chain somehow, I could be reading this capacitor as this capacitor or vice versa. But as you can see, anytime that it's used in a pi filter network, which means a capacitor to ground, then a coil, and then a second capacitor to ground to represent the pi symbol, you've got to unsolder either the coil, or I prefer just unsoldering the positive leads from every capacitor on the board just to make sure I've done a good job and I'm not backfeeding my ESR meter. So let's get down to doing the ESR on these things. Incidentally, here are the 3300 microfarad caps that are both bad, and they are actually on separate circuits. So I see C1027 and C1037. And as you can see, this one feeds the always 4 volts. And then this capacitor up here feeds the always 2.8, probably for the fluorescent display. I noticed the display was a little bit dim in this unit. So let's get to testing the ESR on these caps. Okay, we'll start up here on the input side of the power supply, a 220 microfarad capacitor. First I want to check the pad. I've got no resistance there, and then I'll check the lead itself, and I see 0.19. That's perfectly fine. This is the snubber cap, 10 microfarad. Once again, the pad, nothing, and the capacitor, 5.5 ohms. That's pretty good for a 10. Now down here to the 4700, the main filter cap, and I've got nothing on the pad. Yeah, and the capacitor test 0.06. I'm going to want to go ahead and change that with a replacement cap that's going to read about 0.02. Got a brand new one right here. We'll just test it real quick. And I'm seeing 0.03 on that one, so definitely want to replace that. That's the very problematic cap. Now this is going to be a 10 at 50, nothing on the pad, and 3 ohms. For a 10, that's good. This is a 1000 microfarad cap, nothing on the pad, and 0.08. I'm perfectly fine with that. Here is a 470, nothing on the pad, and 0.12 ohms. I'm good with 0.12. This is another 1000 microfarad cap, nothing on the pad, and 3 ohms. I am not happy with 3 ohms on a 1000, so I'm going to go ahead and mark that one for replacement. Here is a 470 at 16, nothing on the pad, and 0.17 ohms, perfectly fine. This is a 470 at 6.3, 0.13 ohms. I'm very good with that. This is a 22 microfarad cap. And I see 1 ohm. I'm okay on a 22 with 1 ohm. Now down to the bulged caps. These 2 capacitors right here. Nothing on the pad. And I see 0.53 ohms on a 3300 microfarad cap. That is way out of the ballpark. I'd like to see 0.02, 0.03, maybe 0.05 at the most, not 0.5. And now for the other one, check the pad, nothing on the pad. And I see 1.9 ohms. That thing is absolute toast. Onto a 220 at 6.3. These are in series with each other. And I do get a pad reading right there. And I think it's because the capacitor has not completely broke free off the pad. Let's try that again. Okay, nothing on the pad. And 1 ohm on a 220, a little bit high. I want to go ahead and replace that one. The other 220 at 6.3, like I said, they are in series. 1.3 ohms. Now the replacements that I have, I believe, are about 0.4 to 0.5 ohms. So about half the value of the original capacitors. And I think that's all the capacitors. So we're going to throw a new 1000 in it, 2 new 3300s, and a new 4700 at 6.3, and the 2 220s. We'll go ahead and swap those out as well. Okay, so I've got all the capacitors replaced with the exception of the 4700 microfarad 6.3. I've not installed that new one, but I just wanted to show you what happens if I were to measure the pads where that capacitor goes. Everything is reconnected now. Every capacitor is soldered back in the circuit. So I'd expect to see open because there's no capacitor there. But I see 2.8 ohms. How is that even possible? Well, that is possible because if I go on the negative lead, and I follow the positive lead down here, it goes through a coil, and I've got 0.18 ohms through that coil, and then through this coil right here, I've got 0.12 ohms. Now inductors and capacitance don't work well together, so that one says 3.2 ohms. That inductor is not 3 ohms, because I'm measuring at 100 kilohertz, which is why I get that weird reading. That inductor is not 6 ohms DC resistance, but it does show me a total capacitance, an ESR of 3.2 ohms, and that is definitely very misleading when you're trying to diagnose a open or a leaky or a high ESR capacitor. Anyhow, that is the reason I go ahead and unsolder 1 lead of every capacitor, just in case it's in a pi output filter network, or it may have other components that might be shorted, like a Zener diode or just a diode. So let's go ahead and pop this one back in, the new one, the 4700 at 6.3, and we'll do one final ESR test on that capacitor, and it should read about 0.02 at that point. Okay, new capacitor is installed. Let's go ahead and read the ESR of it now. Should be 0.02 or 0.01, and it is 0.01. I'm perfectly fine with that. Keep in mind, I am reading the 3 ohms through the 2 inductors of that other capacitor. So at this point, let's go ahead and clean the board with acetone, and the 220s got changed. The 3300s got changed, and the 1000 and the 4700 microfarad cap have all been changed. Everything else is resoldered. Snubber cap, AC input cap, all the rest of the caps have been resoldered. So I think I'll give it a try, but I'm betting it's not going to correct the tape eating situation that we have. I think it still needs a mode select switch service. And on to more comment-inspired questions. How do I keep my bowl so clean? Well, I go ahead and I put the amount that I think I'm going to need in it from my acetone bottle. I keep the bottle sealed so it's not contaminated. And then I have a rag down here. I'm just going to go ahead and scrub the board with the acetone. And I won't cut this time. Normally I cut this. So what I do is I have a trash can set up down here, and I fling the excess acetone into the trash can, the dirty acetone, and so I'm never actually dipping the acid brush dirty back into the acetone. I fling it off like 2 or 3 times each. And so there we go, nice clean board, no contaminants, no flux, no rosin left on the board. Actually looks better than the day it was born. So let's go ahead and pop it back in the unit. Clean my acid brush off really good, and I'll go ahead and give it a final dip. And now there's only this much acetone left in the bowl, so I'll actually take just a paper towel and I'll wipe out the inside of the bowl for next time just to remove any contaminants. It's just a little Pyrex baking dish is all it is. And so it's clean, well, except for a piece of packing tape on the bottom of it. It's all cleaned up and ready to go for the next time, contaminant free. I can clean video heads with this. I can clean audio heads, circuit boards. It doesn't matter. It is spotless at this point. Okay, power supply board is reinstalled with the new capacitors. I'm just going to go ahead and set the DVD board back in here. Try to get it aligned correctly. Then we just have a couple connectors to plug in. That is from the ATSC tuner, and then these two go down to the main system control. Unit will not power up successfully unless these are connected. So power on, let's see what's going to happen. I get a clock display, and I'm betting it's still going to eat a tape. Let's find out. Okay, it is in the VCR mode. Tape in. Ooh. And it's still trying to load, I can tell. Yep, loading motor is still running, and it just shut down. Mode select switch. Power on. Should try to unload. Might eat the tape. Nope, not going to eat the tape. Well, let's try it a second time. Still trying to load. Yep, I feel the loading motor still running. And then we shut down. Power on. Okay, let's take this thing to bits, as Big Clive would say. Okay, well, I got the guts out of the unit. It is taken to bits. And so I can go ahead and lift up on the mechanism here and then gain access to the mode select switch. And yeah, it looks like it definitely needs a little bit of service. I'm not going to narrate this, I'm just going to do it, and I'll speed everything up. So I've got my stainless toothbrush, and I'm just going to go ahead and scrub the pads on it. I like them scuffed up, it helps keep the contacts clean. So yeah, here we go, speed this thing up. There will be acetone, there will be dielectric grease involved. All right, here we go. Let's pop a tape into it and see what happens. So far, absolute perfection. Let's see if it's going to play more than about 7 to 10 seconds. And nope, gonna shut down. So let's go ahead and clean the real rotation sensor, which lives right here, the prism, and then the infrared emitter, and the infrared emitter lives underneath the prism, and the detector lives under this little gear right here that makes and breaks the light source as it passes. And I bet you that's going to take care of it. All right, here we go. Power back on. And I'm going to say success at this point. So next, let's go ahead and tackle the DVD player, clean the optical pickup. She said that the playback was kind of pixelating, so it might have a dirty pickup. We'll go ahead and check the caps on the DVD player, DVD recorder, and just see what shape they're in. Give this thing 100% tune-up. I will go ahead and clean the tape path. Once again, haters gotta hate. I'm going to use Q-tips to clean the tape path with acetone. You can't do that. Well, 40 plus years, yes, I can do it. Maybe you can't, but I can. Well, there is the optical pickup. Not too terribly bad, but let's go ahead and give it a cleaning with some regular household glass cleaner and a cotton swab. Once again, very, very light downward pressure. Only a few grams, and rotating the cotton swab while scrubbing. Now to the dry end. Same thing, very light downward pressure and rotating the cotton swab. Only clean in circular motions. Well, it certainly looks better already. Next, I'll go ahead and check all the capacitors on the DVD board and just see what shape they are in. All right, here we go. Quick ESR check on the caps on the DVD board. A 330 microfarad cap. I read 0.79 ohms. That's not too terribly bad. A 47 at 16. 5 ohms, that one is definitely bad. A 47 at 6.3. 9 ohms, that thing is toast. .330 at 6.3, 0.28, perfectly fine with that. Another 330, 0.71, it's right on the marginal range. 0.28, good with that. 0.24, good with that. 0.94, just a little bit high. I think I'll recommend to replace that one. .25, perfectly fine with that. A 47 at 6.3. 17 ohms, that thing is ancient history actually. It's not just toast. Like to see about a half ohm or less. And a 100. 5.8, yeah, that is history. Not going to let that one slide. Another 100, 10 ohms, that one's bad. And 0.5, I'm good with 0.5. History on that 10, on that 100, I mean. 3.8, I'm probably going to go ahead and replace that one just because I'm changing all the other 47s. 330, 0.5, I'm okay with that. 0.26, very good. 0.33, okay with that. Another 47 at 6.3. I don't like 4.6. And another 47 at 6.3. I do not like 5.1. It is least but not last, or last but not least. 8.5. Oh yeah, it's definitely last. Okay, so at a minimum, we're going to change every 47 at 6.3. We're going to change that 47 at 16. And probably, I don't know if I should change that 100. It did test okay, but it might have another cap across it somewhere. Yeah, it does read 0.6 ohms. I'm okay with the 0.6 on a 100 microfarad cap. So the majority of this unit is done. I just got to contact the customer and see if they want to go ahead and change these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 capacitors on the DVD board. And then we shall move forward from there. Okay, well I have replaced the 10 capacitors on the DVD board as well as the myriad of capacitors on the power supply. So I'm going to pop a DVD disc into it. We'll close the drawer and see if it can read the table of contents. And it did load the disc, and it does have an active title. So we'll hit play. And I'm going to go ahead and skip through this just a little bit. That's working just fine. We'll skip into it a few chapters. And I'm going to say that's playing the DVD perfectly fine. So next I'm going to go ahead and stop the DVD drive. And we'll put a blank disc in it and see if it's going to go ahead and record from VHS over to DVD. I have a VHS tape that's recorded in EP, 6-hour mode, and it's about 2.5 hours long, so we'll go ahead and get that copy in. So we'll stop that, open the drawer. So I've got a blank DVD-R in the drive now, and we'll see if it's going to read it and tell me that it is indeed a blank DVD-R. And it knows that it is a blank DVD-R. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to record mode, not 6 hours. Let me see. I'm going to go 2.5 hours because that is the length of my tape. And then we'll go ahead and hit the dubbing button and see what happens.
To explode in violence.
The round went into the door and lodged inside the door.
Well, I've recorded for 2 hours and 23 minutes so far on the DVD-R. And as you can see, I'm just showing some workbench from my camcorder that was donated to me. So this is currently an SP recording, and it appears to be playing back just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and clear the display on this unit. And then I think I will just go ahead and stop the recording and finalize the disc, and we'll see what kind of results we get. Well, I certainly remember taking those pictures of Amtrak and Union Pacific and Western Pacific back in the 80s. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and end this recording. So I'm going to stop the tape, and it's going to finalize. It's going to ask that it finalizes the disc, and it's going to write some data onto it, which I'll speed up. Okay, well, it has finished writing to the disc. So next I'm going to stop the disc. Going to go into setup. I'm going to go down to disk edit and finalize the disc. Yes. And this is going to take a moment, which I will speed up once again. Well, it appears to have finished finalizing the disc. So I'm going to stop the disc. I'm going to open the drawer. And then we'll close the drawer and ask it to read the disc and see if it can find the table of contents and actually play the DVD. And yes, it did read the disc. Let's hit play.
To explode in violence.
Around, went into the door and lodged inside the door.
And we'll go ahead and skip through a couple of chapters. Make sure it's got audio correctly.
Individual. We're currently
with this red vehicle, which is real.
And everything looks good. I'm going to say we have a success on our hands. Another Magnavox ZV457MG9 saved from the recycle bin. Well, I certainly hope you enjoyed the repair on the ZV457, replacing the caps in the power supply and on the DVD board and cleaning the mode select switch. I did off camera do a complete VCR tape path cleaning, and it's working absolutely perfectly. Go ahead and leave me a question, a comment, a concern down below, good or bad. I try to respond to the comments when I have time. While you're down there, hit that subscribe button and like this video. It really does help my channel grow. You can follow me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at NorCal715. You can email me, NorCal715videos@gmail.com. That is the best way to contact me. Please be patient. I have a full-time job and I do these repairs in my spare time. If you try to contact me on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, please be aware it might be weeks or even months before I get a chance to respond. I rarely check those messages. Please, if you want to get a hold of me, use the Gmail address only. Remember, with your help, we can try to keep these things out of the landfill, out of the recycle bin, and out of the e-waste facility. Everyone, thank you for making it to the end of this video. I was hoping it was going to be short, but I think it's not that short. Everyone have a great day, and once again, thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.
Near the left rear tire. I don't know if that looks like it's molding or what that is.
Yeah, it might have been something when he went through on the wrong side of the street, or maybe he came close to somebody or something when he was maneuvering through those intersections, because he looked like he came pretty close to some of the vehicles there, but he might have just clipped them.
Paul, remind us once again where this chase started and the roads that we've been down in the past hour or so.
Well, let me see. It started in Simi Valley, went the 118 freeway to the 5 freeway, down the 5 freeway to the 134, 134 eastbound out to Hill Street, Pasadena at the 210. He looped around, came back on the 210 westbound, went to the 134, followed that all the way to the 1.
Better to be safe than sorry. So let me zoom in and tell you what and show you what I'm talking about. Likewise, through a 4700, and it does happen up here once again, 470 at 16, and oh, that one doesn't actually happen. Now down to the bulged caps, these two capacitors right here. Nothing on the pad, and I see 0.53 ohms on a 3300 microfarad cap. That is way out of the ballpark. I'd like to see maybe 0.2 or 0.3, possibly I'd like to see 0.02, 0.03. It's got change and the 1000 and the 43 and the 4700 microfarad cap. Clean this thing with acetone off camera, and then and on to more comment inspired questions. Next, I'll go ahead and check all